Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Fully Booked with Craig Touch, the owner and founder of Hidden Gems Books, and myself, Roland Hume, talking about the wild and crazy business we're in of self-publishing and publishing, advertising, marketing your books. Today, we are thrilled to have a very special guest, Krista Lakes, who many of you, if you are into romance, might know for her very popular series of Billionaire Romances. So we are super excited to have you here, Krista. How are you doing?
I'm doing really well. How are you this morning?
I am very well, thank you. And of course, we are joined by Craig Touch, the man himself, the owner of Hidden Gems and a writer himself, who in the same genre as me, it was MC Romance. So how are you doing this morning, Craig?
I'm doing well. Thanks for joining us, Krista. You and I met at a writers' conference in Vegas, or otherwise known as Adult Disneyland, in my opinion. But that was a few years back, and we've kept in contact ever since. And your husband Sean was on a few weeks ago as well. So we really wanted to get you on, and you're a really successful romance author, and you write about. Typically about, I guess, billionaire romance. And so, we thought we'd want to pick your brain about what makes that popular trope and how it works and how your thoughts on writing it and all that stuff. So what do you think about all that?
Well, first, I'm really excited to be here. My husband had a great time on here. And so I'm like, yeah. Woo. So yeah, I write Billionaire Romance. You can see one of my book covers backwards, of course, because the camera. But yeah, I love Billionaire Romance, mostly because it is basically a Cinderella story. That's the big trope for Billionaire Romance is if you understand Cinderella, you'll understand billionaires. And billionaires are the modern day Prince Charming. We don't have a ton of royalty left in the world that's easily accessible or that we're totally actually interested in. And we're, of course, not interested in real billionaires. I know that Bill Gates is currently single, but I have absolutely no desire to date him, though he would probably take some amazing dates.
Elon Musk, though, is he single? Yeah. I think he's single.
He's single. He broke up with his girlfriend.
Yeah, he's probably a little bit better. I don't know how much time he would have to spend with you, with doing everything, including trying to buy Twitter. But other than that,
that might be the perfect relationship. I think my wife would think that's perfect.
That's right. But yeah, I like that idea. It is a Cinderella story. I haven't really thought about it in that perspective before. I guess the difference is in the nuances of your billionaire. Sometimes they're not quite Prince Charming, or at least they don't start off as Prince Charming, right? Sometimes they're like, the jerk billionaire, and then you find his lighter side as the story goes on. So what's the type of billionaire that you usually write?
So I tend to write cinnamon roll billionaires, just sweet, gooey, wonderful men. So probably not actual billionaires in that regard. But they're usually very busy with their lives and their business, and that's what they focused on. And so they haven't focused on the relationship side of their lives. And then they find our normal but deserving heroine and get to fall in love and finally see that money can't buy everything and what truly matters in life, and get kind of some of those fun world life trope kind of things going. So I love billionaires for that. And you're right, they can be all over the spectrum of that dark, broody, scary Christian Grey all the way to lighthearted, happy-go-lucky kind of people.
It's very interesting what you said about they've put that side of their life on hold, because I always think one of the secrets to writing a romantic lead who seems attractive is he's got other stuff going on. Because it's like guys who are just chasing girls and that's their focus. That's not actually an attractive trait, is it? The hero always has something else going on. And I guess being a billionaire, you've got to focus so much of your time and attention to that.
It really allows for some interesting plot ideas. You can get really easy enemies to lovers trope. She's a a small business fighting against this billionaire mogul, and great enemies to lovers trope in there. You can get long lost best friends where they separated as children and now they're coming back together. But he's been focused on his business and that's why he's never found love. You can have it even that he started this business for her as a semi-romantic kind of gesture, and then that's it, and it took off. There's a lot of really fun things that you can end up doing with that business. And then you can also get the marriage of convenience kind of things where they need just a wife in the background, or they need it for PR purposes, or it opens up a lot of avenues of opportunity.
That's very interesting.
Yeah, that I remember I wrote a couple billionaire romances, and those tropes are familiar. I think one of them was the guy had a resort and he needed to, find a girlfriend to satisfy his parents, and he didn't really want one, but it's still, they ended up falling for each other. So yeah, those tropes all check out with me. I definitely recommend them.
Do you know, speaking of that, I said we all speak the same language. So when you said cinnamon roll, I was like, I know exactly what that means. But to people who might not perhaps be in that so much, I was going to ask for about the tropes. It's like romance. I think all books, but romance especially, has the tropes that people like. Why do people like those tropes? And how did you find your cinnamon roll trope? And why do you keep writing that?
So I love the cinnamon roll trope where they're just warm and gooey people, and they're actually very sweet underneath. Probably because that's what I like in my real life. I don't really, that the alpha hole is always appealing in a faraway sense. Like, I love the idea of an alpha hole, but actually marrying one would be terrible. Dating someone with that just alpha energy would actually be really hard. So I've started several books being like, I'm going to write an alpha hole, super dominant, scary military dude. And then he always turns into this sweet, wonderful, gooey person. And I think people like that. I think that I think everybody wants a little bit of sweetness in their life.
Absolutely, especially these days.
Yeah, for sure. I think that there's probably two types of readers, where, because we're writing romance, but it's fantasy, right? Where these are, most of us aren't going to meet a billionaire, so from that perspective, obviously it's fantasy. But also there are people that are like you, where it's like you like the idea of the alpha hole, but you in your personal life would never want to marry one, billionaire or not. So, but then I guess there are people though that for the romance that they read, they want them to be the alpha hole because it's fantasy anyways, right? They're fantasizing about that, and they can forget about the realities of how they would have to live with that person and the kind of person they would be, and this being swept away and changing him and this and that. And then there's, of course, the ones that, even though they're reading fantasy, they still want it to be more rooted in reality and have the person be the cinnamon roll, be the sweet and gooey and stuff. So I guess that's kind of like the two types of readers out there: the ones that want to just be completely swept away in a fantasy that they know is not at all reality, and the ones that want to have that bit of a link to reality where, that's still a guy that they would like, even though they'll never meet him and maybe he never existed or never will exist. But I think that maybe that's the two types of readers, because you write all these cinnamon rolls and you do well with them, and then there's people that write those alpha holes and they do well with them. And so it's like it's an interesting, I haven't really thought about it in that sense of the types of person that would read them and what they would be thinking about and connecting with, like you're saying there. Yeah. So
Definitely. Yeah. I mean, romance is a huge wish fulfillment. You get to have a million relationships with romance. There's a popular TikTok going on right now where people are saying, I read romance because I have the mind of a slut, but a heart of a married woman. And so that they get to live vicariously through these books. And it's true. I love reading romance because I get to fall in love every other week with a different man. and I get to come home to my husband every day, and I don't actually have to deal with any of those crazy situations, but I get to experience that high and that swoon factor, which is really what reading is all about, is getting to experience other things, exciting things. And so I love romance for that. And thus Billionaire Romance, because like you said, I will probably never meet a billionaire. Or at least I will never date a billionaire. Sorry, Bill Gates. Um, it's
He's going to
so
unsubscribe now.
I know. I'm so sorry. Well, if he wants to take me out on a date, I am super open. And
Is Sean super open with that too?
if this is an indecent proposal situation, we've discussed it. It's okay. He wants that $1 million.
Oh, okay.
I love romance because it's almost like Ben and Jerry's ice cream. There's a different flavor for everybody, and everyone has the flavor they like, whether it's, and so instead of Rocky Road and like fish food, you've got friends to lovers, and you've got like all the younger age gap or whatever it is. But the escapist thing, romance gets such a bad rap. But then you think the escapist thing, where you get to live through vicariously through these wild situations, that's no different to guys reading James Bond books, is it? It's like,
no,
we want to go to fancy hotels and drink wine and shoot people and be badass, and that's just escapist. In the same way romances, they're the same thing.
Exactly, yeah. Except for I do want to go to fancy hotels and drink wines and shoot bad guys. I just want a cute guy to do it with me. Like that's I'll take James Bond too. That sounds great.
So how did you get into writing Billionaire Romances? Like, did you start off? What's your history of writing? How did you begin your journey to get where you are now?
Yeah. So my very first book was someone told me I should write a novel. And so I wrote New Adult was the new hotness at the time. And I wrote this small town new adult romance, and it flopped horribly. But I loved writing it. It was so much fun. And I sat down and I started trying to think of what I wanted to read, what I liked. And I came up with this beach romance with a billionaire that had a secret marriage. And how would I meet a billionaire? Like, how does one even meet a billionaire? So I came up with this idea of that this girl won a fancy vacation. So she gets to go to this amazing resort that she could never afford in real life. And she meets this man there, and they have an amazing time. They get pretend married because neither one of them thinks that they're actually ever going to get married. And they go their separate ways. Well, oops, he's a billionaire. Surprise. And then how that would transpire. And that book was Saltwater Kisses. And that was so it was my second book, and it hit the Amazon Top 100. And wow. It was very surprising. And
yeah, I remember that book. That did really well.
Yeah, and I loved it. And so I wrote a whole series of these billionaires who get to meet women who don't know they're billionaires and find that love connection that isn't based on money, and but definitely benefits. They get to go on helicopter rides and fabulous adventures, and they don't have to worry about who's paying the check at the end of the dinner.
Yeah.
And there is definitely something very attractive about that. And so, yeah, that's how I started in Billionaires. And then I just kind of kept going. And the hardest part is just figuring out, how does one actually meet a billionaire? And in normal society, how does a normal person end up meeting a billionaire is usually the basis for a lot of these books.
Yeah, I think a lot of it has to come down to chance too. I'm trying to think to myself about, there's no female billionaire books that I can think of. I mean, there might be some out there. And then I'm thinking to myself, why, whether or not that would ever, sort of be a popular trope. And I'm thinking it's probably wouldn't be. And then I'm thinking, like, why not? Right. And I wonder if it's, well, I guess, when you write for a certain audience, and romance is typically for women, usually your audience member wants to put themselves into that into the book, right? They want to feel like they are the character, right? So if you're going to say that the female is the billionaire, then it's much harder to imagine that that's your situation, because it's not, right? So you're not going to be all of a sudden the billionaire in your own story, and that's not like something where you can be like fantasize, oh, this could have happened to me. Well, yeah, in the male billionaire meeting you, that could happen, but in the female billionaire, well, first you've got to make $1 billion. So I think it's a harder way, a longer road to fantasize about. I guess.
There are a lot of those super successful career women who go back to their hometown and meet their high school boyfriend who looks like he's broke, but she falls in love and realizes there's more to life to money. And then it turns out he's actually got a successful business on the side. That's kind of a trope, isn't it? But you're right, they're never billionaires, but they are super successful women, because I think women can maybe see themselves in that super high performing world where you're working a lot and you feel like you're missing out in life. And those themes, I think, that resonate with a lot of people, I guess.
And they're meeting other men that are also successful, right? I wonder why that is, right? Is it because they feel like if they met the guy and he wasn't successful, it would be emasculating? They want the masculine man that has the power. Like, what is it that makes that, I don't know, that you find that a lot of the stories where the man is a popular romance stories where the man isn't the one that has that. And I wonder why that is, is that a part of the trope?
Yeah, I'm not sure. There are a couple of successful female billionaires, but they tend to be in series that are already established, where she's the sister who helps run the business. But yeah, I think it also comes back to that Prince Charming kind of swept away. He takes away all my problems, at least all my financial problems. And that there is something sexy to that. And of course, being, a strong, independent woman who can take care of herself is a definite trope. And, and if you're a billionaire, are you settling if you go down in social status there? Are you, as women, we're conditioned to, from the Regency period, you must marry up, you must, marry the Duke, you must increase your social standing. That's a very common Regency kind of historical romance theme. And I think that's put into our world, even in modern day, of you can marry better, you can do better. And so if you're a billionaire, how do you do better? How do you...
I think there's a word for it, hegemony of the marrying up. That's amazing.
Yeah, exactly. How do you do better? How do you marry up if you're already a billionaire? And how is he going to take care of you?
Trillionaire romance. It's a whole new genre you've just invented.
The trillionaire. Yeah. Well, so, and that's the thing, is like, but it's not the opposite, right? Because in pretty much all of the male billionaire romance, the women are not billionaires. They might be successful, or they might have their own, there might be strong women and stuff, but they're not worried about, oh, I'm marrying. So I guess that's sort of like, something about our society that says maybe it's not a good thing, or maybe it is, I don't know. but yeah.
There's a lot of societal norms and injustices and all sorts of stuff that romance is built around, and a lot of books touch on it, and a lot of books just utilize them. I think one of the really popular tropes for a more powerful woman falling in love with a man are like the bodyguard romances.
Yeah.
So you're getting away from that billionaire trope of the Prince Charming gonna fix it, take it all away. He's so busy with business, but he finds time for you kind of feeling. And then if the woman is in that position, then you're going more into what's she doing? And now we're going into what he brings. And so if he's a bodyguard, you get that really nice bodyguard protector, and you can get some nice alcohol ness in there with that as well.
Yeah, and I think that sort of is the same thing, where it's like the bodyguard is like the protector, but he's protecting you physically, and then the billionaire is almost like the protector. He's protecting you financially. It's always this sort of male dominated, which is, again, it's like almost like I don't know, say sexist kind of role that that we all accept in our romance, but in real life, people say, well, you shouldn't put people in those categories, but then people write it and people read it, and it's still a popular sort of trope and a popular sort of dynamic between the male and the female. It's interesting.
I think people, what they can depend on. They, I mean, romance, we get a lot of flack of they're all the same. You know, it's always the same. Boy meets girl, boy loses girl. They get back together happily ever after. And it's, some people don't like it because it's so consistent. But I think that's actually part of the draw, is that people like what they can depend on. And when they pick up that book, they know exactly what they're going to get. And if we follow these societal norms, then people know what they're getting, and they know they're not going to be surprised. They don't have to think super hard. A little bit of thinking is good. But especially romance tends to be an escapism kind of place. So you don't want to have to think about these hard societal, is society doing the correct thing? Are we in the right place? And even Billionaire Romance, most of it skirts around the ethical issues around billionaires. And don't worry, this billionaire is a good billionaire. He, that's usually in there somewhere, is just, oh, he donates so much to charity and he works so hard, and, you know, kind of justifying the idea. Yeah.
What a brilliant answer.
It's true though, and you think about it, when like the billionaires are never like, even the alpha they're not they're not evil. They're not like Putin, where, you know, they got all their money by, you know, screwing over their country and stealing it, right? They might be jerks, but usually their billions are made ethically, and, you know, they're not doing anything. They're not crushing the competition. I guess I'm sure there are some out there where like they're doing that, but I think most are not, right?
There are some
tyrannical dictator romance, that a new genre. Sorry.
Dictator romance.
No, that would be there are some where they are definitely ethically gray, but then there's usually a redemption arc for them.
Right.
And the woman brings them into the light and shows them that they should not be doing these horrible practices. And her love redeems him and thus makes things better. So there are some where they're definitely, you get that kind of mafia romance vibe, where they're doing bad stuff and they're not good people. But her love transforms them and they become better.
Mafia, MC, all that sort of stuff. Yeah, there's always that redemption arc. But I thought with billionaires, well, I guess there would be the redemption, but from the ones I've read, they're usually like, you know, they didn't create their billions off of the backs of others. I mean, I'm sure there are some out there, but I think, you know, probably the majority are sort of, they're more gray, maybe in the gray, not so much like the mafia and the you know, the MC sort of stuff, where they're not usually good people, but they do have that soft side.
I think with romance, like it's right on the cutting edge of the cultural conversation, because if you view so many of the tropes and things you could view in today's viewpoint as like toxic, but then at the same point, they're things that resonate with people, and that's why romance has them, and that's why romance is successful. And it's like, I guess biologically, there are things that drive men and women and things differently that romance books give you that fantasy of. So maybe we trying to judge them from the outside in is kind of it starts to approach like a level of censorship, where you're like, okay, you can't have romance novels with this particular angle because that's toxic. And it's like, maybe, but then maybe we're having a deeper conversation when we think about what it is that makes certain parts of romance appeal to people.
Yeah, no, there's been a lot of talk in romance circles, especially in regards to like racism right now, where books from 20, 30 years ago had these very not good descriptions and situations because they're 20, 30 years old, and that was acceptable in that time. I say as a definitely young person. And then these books are being brought up in topics, and well, could we write that book today? And a lot of times it's like, no, we could, but we shouldn't. And how that progresses. And it is really interesting to watch the genre progress and change with societal times, and what is acceptable, what isn't. How acceptable are the bodice rippers kind of things? Can we make that an okay scenario? How can we make it so that it isn't scary, rapey, but in a good way? Like how and how that changes with what society accepts is acceptable. It's I love it. It's so much fun to watch from a meta.
And then there is a very valid point that there is a large female audience who likes the good, scary, repeat type thing. They actually like to read books like that. So it's kind of like, I think it's fascinating. I just think it's so interesting that it's like a market exists. There are people who enjoy this, and then culturally we say no, but then people as being human beings say yes. And it's like, where do you break the two apart?
Yeah, and it goes back to that escapism too. There's a lot of things that in fiction that I would not want to do in real life. I mean, heck, I love the idea of like being a dragon rider. That sounds amazing. I'm scared of heights. Like, honestly, that would be terrible. Like I refuse to go skydiving, yet that's basically what you do if you were a dragon rider. But I love the idea. And so I think there's a lot of things and that's a very benign example. But yeah, there's a lot of wish fulfillment and what would happen. And I like that we can explore that in fiction. And
yeah. And I think, we were actually, before you joined, Roland and I were talking about the Will Smith Academy Awards sort of thing. And it's almost like we're seeing in real time what people are really thinking about sort of some actions that maybe in a book where a guy gets up and hits a guy that insults his wife is more acceptable. But then we see it in reality and then, and it's interesting because people are kind of mixed, online. A lot of people are defending it and a lot of people are saying he shouldn't have done that. And it's sort of the same sort of thing where like people have their different feelings about how those things are, even when it's real, not just when it's fantasy. Everybody's got an opinion on it, right? So it's cool to see all that stuff sort of play out. I agree with you. Like it's fun to watch how society reacts to certain things, because it really tells us a lot about the world we're living in, right?
It's definitely a mirror to society. And what isn't acceptable, and how can we justify things, what level of gray is okay.
But I think that's what's beautiful about it. That's why romance is, because people deride romance, but actually when you think about it, it's the cutting edge of the cultural conversation. And you spoke about how people deride romance being formulaic, but I almost think of it as long form poetry. Or a song has a melody and a chorus and things, as you said, you expect, whatever the song is, you kind of know where it's going to go next. And if it doesn't go that way, it's jarring to you. And I think that's what romance is as well. So I think it's an art form. It's like the fact that when you delve into it, it has these really thorny, difficult conversation starters, elevates it as an art form. And I think people should pay more respect to it as a genre.
Well, as an artist, thank you. I think romance is the best-selling genre out there. It sells amazingly so, but I think it also receives a lot of hate, probably because it is a more female based genre, and it does have that formulaic quality. But like you said, so does everything. Every murder mystery out there has the same concept, bad thing happens, person comes to investigate it, red herring answer. It's always the same. The red herrings change, and that's fun. And romance has the same thing, but we like what we can expect, and when it doesn't follow that, I don't think people enjoy it as much.
Definitely not.
For sure. If you write and we see this all the time where somebody writes a book that is completely outside of the norms, a lot of times it just doesn't do so well. And it could be a good book, but it's not what people are expecting. It's not what they wanted to read, and it's also harder to market it to find your audience for it, because it's a new thing. Maybe once in a while somebody will strike gold and they'll create some new genre that will strike with people. But a lot of the times, if you don't pay attention to your audience and your tropes and what they expect, you're not going to see the level of success that you were hoping for.
Yeah, definitely hitting what people want, but giving them that sense of novelty as well is huge. But yeah, that's why we love McDonald's. It's the same every time. We know exactly, when I go order a Big Mac, I know that if I order it in Chicago, if I order it in New York, if I order it in Taiwan, I'm going to get a Big Mac and I will be happy with that. Whereas if I go to some hole in the wall restaurant, I might end up with the best meal of my life, or I might end up with food poisoning. I don't know. I might stick with my McDonald's that I know exactly what I'm going to get. I think I'm better than McDonald's. I think I'm at least internet quality. But
I think you're perfectly right about McDonald's. McDonald's is consistent and it always tastes delicious. And sometimes you go to Paris and they have something completely crazy there that you don't have in America, but you try it, but you're going to like it because you kind of know that whatever you get from McDonald's, you're going to like.
Exactly. I love the pineapples on hamburgers in Hawaii. They put pineapples on them, and it's amazing. It's fantastic. But I know it's a McDonald's hamburger, and I know that if I don't like it, I can go back up to the counter and be like, "Hey, not for me," and they'll be like, "Here, have some free fries." So I'm gonna walk away happy no matter what, and I think that as an author is important to always be able to have something that your reader will walk away being like, maybe that wasn't the best for me, but I'm still happy with what I got. I still got enough of what I expected. And to be a successful author, you can't just be trying new stuff all the time. A little bit's good, but if you want to be successful, you have to give people what they want.
Yeah, and I don't think there's anything wrong with that. Isn't the whole thing of being an artist is you tell the story you want to tell in a way that people want to have it told to them.
Right. For sure. And so when you look at Billionaire Romance, what are the commonalities between maybe all Billionaire Romance that sort of makes it really resonate with people?
So coming back on topic. So Billionaires, I really think that there is, like I said, that Prince Charming Cinderella kind of ability. It's a rich, powerful man that has decided that you, as the reader, are so amazing that he sees your awesome sauce and wants to be with you, wants to change for you, wants to give you the world, and he actually has the capability to do that. You've got your different flavors in there with your dark, more Christian Grey kind of romances. You've got your more cinnamon roll ones, but I think that's a very big commonality through all of them, is that this powerful, rich man who could have anyone in the world, wants you as the reader. And that's very powerful and very addicting to have someone better than you wanting you. It's the popular kid wants you. Ooh. It's a common trope. Prince Charming comes and saves you. He takes you away from your horrible life and fixes everything. And I think that's the thing that all Billionaire Romances have in common, is that not necessarily save, but make better and have picked you. You are the chosen one in this situation.
It's funny, you were saying how it's all about falling in love 100 times, except maybe it's all about you read 100 books and it's somebody falling in love with you 100 times, and that's what makes it so warm and fuzzy inside.
Well, I like that. That's good.
That's quite good. I know.
You should be an author, or write a podcast or something.
Yeah, I think I like that idea that you're the billionaire can have anything he wants. He's a billionaire, right? He can buy whatever he wants. He can do whatever he wants, but he's chosen you. And I think you're right, that's one of the big draws to it. Especially when you can, as a reader, you put yourself in the role of that person that he's choosing. And that's the big draw there for sure.
Oh yeah. getting picked first for the kickball team. The popular kids, all
right.
about you.
That's right.
That's such a powerful feeling, you know, to get picked, excuse me, to be prom queen, or you know, the winning an Oscar. Everyone likes you, and so having a powerful person pick you to be their life partner is this kind of thrilling feeling, even in the pages of a book. And so I think that's really the big appeal for Billionaire Romance, is just a powerful person who could have anything wants you. And that Cinderella, like picked from obscurity, your normal life, and he's searching the globe for you kind of thing, is a really good feeling and works really well for romance novels.
Yeah, for sure.
So in terms of the character arcs, like, do your billionaires go through a character arc? I guess there's that signature moment of sacrifice that you have to have in a romance story sort of towards the end. But do you also have a similar sort of story arc for your female characters? And like, how does that take form, and how does it intersect the billionaire one?
Yeah, no, that's a lot of fun. And it can vary so much, which is a lot of the fun of it. A lot of times I have strong women who have to decide that if they want to be involved with a billionaire, because there's a lot of responsibility that comes along with that. In Saltwater Kisses, her dream is to become a veterinarian. Well, if she's married to a billionaire, she's just going to get sued to oblivion if she's a veterinarian, because anytime she touches an animal, somebody's be like, oh, she's got deep pockets. I can, you know, so she's like, if I marry him, I will be able to maybe do some charity work, you know, stuff like that. But that I won't be able to be a veterinarian the way that I dreamed. And so she has to come to terms with that. And she ends up running an animal charity. And so she's able to work around that. Spoiler. How, as a billionaire's wife, you're always in the public eye. Is that something that you are interested in? Is that a sacrifice that you're willing to make for this love? So that's a common arc. And then also the, am I worthy? A lot of these women, and I think a lot of women in general, don't think highly enough of themselves. And then, you know, this powerful man chose them. Well, why did they chose me? What's the reason? Am I actually worthy? Am I as good as he thinks I am? And so that's a nice character arc for them to kind of have to figure out and go through, and how that works in their lives.
I love that. And that is interesting. When you sometimes have your dreams wishes granted, like in marrying a billionaire or something, you're right, suddenly a whole host of new problems come up that people hadn't even thought of.
So how are you coming up with so how many billionaire books have you written at this point?
Let's see. I have 35 books out. And I think 30 of them are billionaires. I've sort of I have a couple of royalty romances, which are very similar.
Yeah,
that
counts.
kind of,
They're billionaires, right? I mean,
yeah,
you can't be a king, a poor king. Come on.
exactly, yeah. But just kind of that life of privilege and money, picking a commoner, and coming up with that. So I stick with that. I've done a couple of small town romances, but they never seem to do as well. I guess I'm a billionaire girl. So
Well, I was going to say, which ones do you enjoy writing most? Because I think the intersection of when you write what you enjoy writing most and it's your most successful, that's the sweet spot, isn't it?
Yeah, I really do like the billionaire and the royalty romance. I think that little bit of fantasy, that little bit extra. You know, small town, it feels too real to me, feels too close to home. I like the little bit of extraordinary. So I think that's where I like the billionaire, writing them more. And basically my biggest one is just me coming up with, how in the world does a normal person end up meeting a billionaire? So I've got one girl, she's a lawyer. That's how she met a billionaire. This girl won a vacation. That's how she became a billionaire. This one has a business that the billionaire is going to buy. Another one has that she is an ecologist trying to save an area, and he's a billionaire real estate mogul. And so how do normal people end up interacting with billionaires, and how would you go about that is usually where I get the basis for the beginning of a story, and then just kind of goes from there.
I love that. And that's very interesting. You talk about romance being formulaic, but it's kind of, when you're a good writer like you are, you come up with your characters who are very fully formed already, and then put them into that situation. How does the normal girl meet the billionaire? And I guess from that point, the characters, just the way they would interact, kind of writes the story for you.
Oh, definitely. One of the big things in writing that I was told to come up with your plot is, for romance, come up with two characters that shouldn't be together, and how do you make them come together? And that will give you most of your romantic plot. And then you can throw in, like a hurricane or whatever else needs to go in there. But a lot of the drama can just come from these two diametrically opposed people who fall in love. And how does that work? I think a really good example of this is in Bridgerton. She does this marvelously well with, I just watched the second season. We have Kate, who has said, I will never get married. And then we have the Duke, who is like, I must get married. And like, how do we have a diametrically opposed thing here. How do we get around that?
I love that. That show's great.
She does so much good in those. I love that series. It's good.
So have you tried to marry the billionaire in the small town at all? I mean, it seems like that's there's the how did she meet him sort of answer right there, is somehow he came to a small town, like, and then you sort of get those two together, right?
Or he came from the same small town.
Yeah.
Yes, that's a good one. I do have a series where he's moved back to the small town because he's tired of being a billionaire. And then that causes things. I wrote a whole series with that because I do like the idea of a small town. It's just that it feels too normal. So I need something. I would love to write werewolves, but that's a little bit not quite my genre. So I'll stick with billionaires. They feel a little more realistic. I can work with that. But yeah, I love coming up with, how would a billionaire go to a small town? Why would he be in a small town? Who would he marry in this small town? Why would they want to marry him? Or at least date. We don't have to do the whole marriage thing. It can.
I'm still stuck on the idea of being bored being a billionaire. I'm like, how would I ever get bored being a billionaire?
How many convertibles do you have to shoot into space before you're like, nah, I'm good? Can we go and start fishing or something?
Start another company.
When you can buy anything, what do you do when you can't buy anymore? And you don't want to start a rocket company. I don't know.
I guess that's true. Not everyone wants to start a rocket company. Most of the billionaires do, but not all of them.
If I were a billionaire, I would start a rocket company. That just sounds amazing.
I think in Back to the Future, Doc Brown is like, I'm going to give up science and research the final mystery, women. And maybe that's it. Elon Musk is going to be like, oh, we conquered space. Now to understand the most mysterious thing of all.
Well, he's got that brain interface company that he's working on. I think that's probably like the inevitable conclusion to that. He's pretending that it's something else, but at some point it's like, I'm going to now understand the female brain.
So Elon Musk will become the next romance writer he'll be the next E.L. James. He's going to write the next big one with his thought brain thing. It's just going to come up.
Yeah, it's kind of scary. You think maybe he's just going to reprogram everyone to just to like him, whatever.
To love billionaires.
Yeah, exactly. They'll all be lined up at his house.
Well, we are nearing the top of 45 minutes. But this has been such a fascinating discussion. I know we could probably go on for a lot longer. But Krista, tell us what you're working on now and where people who have been fascinated by what you've been saying can go and find more from you.
Sure. I am working on a royal romance right now. I'm hoping to have it out late summer. It is set in a made-up European country, but basically my prince needs an heir. And so he is recruiting to find someone who can give him an heir. So that's the
What
plot.
a Tinder bio that would be.
Yes, he is, and luckily he's found a girl that will do the job, and how this is going to work out for them. It's so much fun. It's definitely a very sexy, fun book, and I'm loving writing it. And if you want to know more updates, you can find me I'm on Facebook, and I am on TikTok and Instagram, and I don't really do much Twitter, so I'm on Twitter, but I never answer Twitter. So
Elon Musk is buying 9% of Twitter just to get your attention.
I see. All right. Well, if he's going to go to that much trouble, I guess I can tweet once in a while.
That's how you're going to meet your billionaire.
I hope Sean's all right with this three-way with Elon Musk. He probably will be. He likes rockets. It's fine. We'll just send him off to the rocket museum.
That sounds great. That sounds like a happy ever after for the guy as
well. For everybody.
So, Craig, any last thoughts?
Thank you so much for having me on here. This was so much fun. Go read Billionaire Romance. I love Billionaire Romance. But yeah.
Yeah. Thanks so much for joining us too. I mean, this has been a great talk, and I think it's clear that we'll have to have you on again, because there's lots more that we can talk to in terms of, the whole nuts and bolts of writing romance in general. That's a topic that lots of authors want to hear about, right? So, thanks for joining us, and hopefully we can get you back on very soon.
I would love that. Thank you so much for having me. This was a blast.
That's wonderful. Well, Krista, we really, really appreciate it. And to those of you who are listening, tuning in on YouTube or on our podcast, please make sure to give Krista a like down below. And if you're not subscribed already, subscribe to our podcast. All of the details, links to her stuff are going to be down below as well. And join us again next week for another episode of Fully Booked. Thank you very much for joining us.